Welcome to my YouTube channel once again. I'll actually admonish you to please subscribe to our videos so that when we post anything, you receive a notification. And also, I'd like you to comment and then like our videos. And those who are sending the mails about some of the topics or things you want us to treat, we'll be doing that as and when we get to each particular meal. So thank you very much for also showing interest. So today we'll be looking at electoral politics and democracy. We'll continue with this slide, slide 2, electoral politics and democracy in Ghana, where the focus is introduction to theories of voting. So we'd want to understand why people vote, or why do people vote the way they do, because definitely we want to know if somebody is voting has voted for the Republican Party for the past decades or 5 decades, or somebody has voted for the New Patriotic Party in Ghana for quite a decade, 2 decades. Likewise, maybe the NDC for 2 decades. We want to understand why they do what they do. So today we are looking into theories so these theories will seek to enlighten us and giving us understanding about if you see somebody voting a particular way or a certain vote being seen in a particular trajectory, it means that this is a theory that underpins it, that explains it, and gives you better understanding of the particular behavior that actually informs such voting. So the first thing I want to show you is a map of Ghana. This is sourced from EIB network. So you see a description of the current election results by regions, where the MPP actually virtually had gone through the Ashanti, the Eastern, the Northeast, and then the NDC actually got the following regions. So after we are done with this particular understand the theories, you understand how come these divisions exist, how come people vote this way, what accounts for all these drawings or all this coloration you see in this particular map. So the theories of voting, as we will look at sociological model, we're looking at rational choice model, the party identification model, and we're looking at dominant ideology model also. There are other models that exist, but these are the models that we'll be looking at for today. So the first one has to do with party identification model. Before I'll do that, I want to ask you that all of you may have a football team you may like. You may like the Manchester United, the Chelsea, the Asante Kotoko, the Elali, a lot of TP Mazembe. These are teams that you may support, right? So some of you, when you grew up, you began to like these teams because maybe the family or the household you find yourself are all supporters of these particular teams I've mentioned. So imagine it from that football perspective, where now you support Chelsea, you support Man United, you support Alali because when growing up you've seen your dad, your mom, or maybe your siblings all watching Alali or Kotoko or Chelsea. So that has been what you've always grown up to like. So put this at the back of your mind as I seek to explain or define what party identification model is. That party identification is an emotional bond or loyalty voters feel towards a political party or an emotional attachment to a political party, right? So, as I said, this is acquired through what? Family. So, many people get their party loyalty from family. It can be like your parents, your grandfather, as I said earlier. So, you see, your family has voted the MPP and NDC over a long period, and then you grow up to also what? Vote the same way. I hope you're getting me. So sometimes when you even go to election or the poll, they tell, oh, you're going to vote for this party, because it's been more like a family tradition. I hope you're getting me. So it's something that is quite stable over time and it's passed often down by generations. So you've met your grandfather vote that way, your father is voting that way, and you realize that it also has an effect on you. You also begin to vote the same way or vote in the same pattern. So when you go to uh, places in Ghana like the Volta region or the Ashanti region, you find that there's more of inclination in the Volta region to the NDC, where most people are more in the view of the party identification model, where they are inclined to vote that particular way because they've seen their their mother, their grandmothers, and their fathers voting the same way. Likewise, the same situation you find what in somebody who is hailing from, let's say, the Ashanti region, who are seen as mother, father live there, and then they've been voting that way for a long time. So this new crop of generation more like comes to what inherit that. So for you to get this, you realize that when I mentioned the Ashanti region, I mentioned the Volta region. So when you look at this breakdown, this gives us a breakdown from 1996 to 2012, the presidential election. We're looking at for regional. You realize that over the period, one particular region you found out that they've always voted the Ashanti region throughout. Uh, as we voted for Ashanti region throughout, as we voted for the NPP, right? And you find out that one particular region that has also voted for the NDC throughout has always been, you have a stronghold like more like the Volta region. This map you are seeing was not be when it was divided. Ghana has some regions now, 16 regions, and also within this period Ghana still operated 10 regions. And you realize that you see this particular what division that exists over here, which shows you the kind of loyalty, the kind of party identification loyalty what we are talking about that seeks to influence these voters to vote in this particular way. Moving on to the advantage of this particular model that we're talking about. The first advantage I'll talk about is makes election outcome predictable in stronghold. So what we've come to know is that these regions that have this higher party loyalty often deliver the same election what results every cycle. So for example, the Ashanti region regularly vote for the MPP, whilst the Volta region vote for NDC. So it will be easy for you to make a prediction in terms of it forecast in terms of what performance of the particular party in this particular region. So if not for anything, you can say, okay, fine, the least the NDC may get out of the Volta region maybe an 80% in the coming election. The least maybe the MPP may get maybe a 60% in the Ashanti region. It gives you, it makes it in terms of prediction of this particular strongholds easier, and then reduce campaigning costs for parties in loyal regions. So because these parties come to understand that these are places where they put into brackets in quote they call as world banks. That means they'll deliver them this particular kind of votes. They mostly in time spend more time when it comes to other regions that they feel are swing regions. Swing regions are regions that are particularly they vote um, differently. They don't vote one party over a period and then they change party in and out, vote for different party in and out through different electoral cycles. So they rather spend more money and campaign time in swing regions, right? Because these particular places are easy for them and they know that definitely they're going to get voters vote from this place. So funds are not mostly focused too much, and the funds may be sent to in Ghana, may be sent to the central region, to the what's the to the places that are seen as a what as a swing regions in terms of voting, and the central region is one of that particular region seen as a swing region. So the fosters party loyalty and identity. So this long-term support builds strong emotional what connection. So people associate their identity with this party. Up getting which strengthen the internal unity and the long-term party growth for this political party. To their disadvantages, we said this devalue candidate quality. So the issue over here is that because these people think sometimes as long as they win the primaries and then they're going to go through the election, because whatever be the case, these are strong goals, they're going to win and all those things. What you realize is that voters may ignore their ability or the quality of the individual candidate. So when they go to the polls, what are they really asking for? Is this the umbrella? Is this the elephant? They are basically even voting based on just symbols of the parties, not necessarily based on even the individual, because they don't really care about the individual. Then it comes this way, we can end up voting people at the constituency level mostly who may not be competent enough to help what in terms of what parliamentary what duties, which affects the quality of what of performance or the outcome of what parliamentary services. And then another point has to it encourage what entrenched positions potentially and leading to what conflicts. So the issue over here is that these things actually lead to what this particular strong party identification leads to this. Sometimes is the NDC versus the MPP. It becomes us versus them. So it can fuel tribalism, regionalization. It can even be violent conflict. So you realize sometimes you realize that fine, oh you're Votarian, so you're going to vote for what? The NDC. So no, you're not part of us. You're an Ashanti. You're going to vote. So this is it. It fuels tribalism, this regionalism, and then it fuels that violent stuff. So sometimes the politics turns into a zero-sum game because people feel like, fine, if you're not winning, that means you're not in power. So we have to put everything that we have to do, where you realize it leads to violence and all those things. So some of these things, you realize that even the Dagbon chieftaincy crisis in the early 2000s was politicized by what the NPP and the NEC in terms of allegations, where this were accusing the other that okay, you guys are the ones that are behind this particular conflict. They're the one who are causing it. This one also retaliates and accuse all this, and it does not help the unity of what of the country. And then another point disadvantage is that skirt and blouse. There's a term that is using, and I'll explain that. Skirt and blouse voting what exposes limit of party what loyalty. The skirt and blouse actually that's exposes that limit of party loyalty. How does it work? So when we talk about skirt and blouse, is when voters choose a different party for the president and MP or at the constituency level. So in one breath, you find them voting for example, they may vote for the MPP in the presidential election and vote for an independent candidate in the parliamentary election or a different party. So when you realize there may be some strongholds that used to exist to be for the MPP, but you realize that in the voting days in 2024, you saw that some of these individuals who voted for the president also did the same thing by going to vote for an independent candidate. I hope you're getting me. So this shows that there's even what that stronghold loyalty can be broken. So as a party, it makes you too what this cat and blouse situation as a party, it makes you too comfortable and you feel like, oh, this is our stronghold, we will win, we will win, we will win. And at a point in time, when the people are even talking, or the voters are talking, you may not listen and actually feel the candidate that may not be the best, which actually will affect you and it may lead to what your losses. I hope that's the point we are seeking to communicate in terms of this skirt and blouse. Then I want to show you a picture of something. So in Ghana, for instance, so constituencies that have voted skirt and blouse more than once. When you go to Boko Central in 2000, 2004, they voted what skirt and blouse. We've seen Sisala East, you've seen Laura, we've seen Damango, we've seen Akan, we've seen Nkwanta North, we've seen Offenso North, we've seen Pristia Huni Valley, Alembele, and then Aguna East, Afutu, Jomoro. All these are constituencies that cut across the length and breadth of the country and have actually voted skirt and blouse. So in this particular cartoon, that is what you see. This is when an individual which is vote for example, the male figure here is the presidency. You find one voter voting for this person for the presidency and voting for that person as well forward for the constituency, voting the NDC or the vice versa. Also, we're going to another model has to do with what sociological model. So the main idea about the sociological model is that voter behavior is shaped by social identity. So who you are, where you come from, and your group membership. So this highlights the importance of social alignment, which is a reflection of the various division and the tension what within a society. So people vote based on what the interest of the group they belong. So ethnicity, religion, class, and region. So looking at Deborah in one of his book, which the Ghana vote and the Ghanaian voters and the 2023 election, you realize that it shows that people from the voter region since 92 have seen that they've aligned themselves with the NDC. See that the NDC represent the ethnic hegemony of Votarians. So most of the time you find that Votarians align themselves with the NDC. So they feel like the NDC represents their interest. So it doesn't matter if it's an Ashanti, as a Fanti, as a Northerner that is standing on the ticket of the NDC. Votarians will vote for that because they feel they represent their hegemonic what identity in terms of ethnicity in this country. So the same way you find that the Ashantis over the period find themselves aligned with the MPP, because they feel that the MPP represent their hegemonic status or the hegemonic powers or influence when it comes to what governing a nation. So you find them also having inclination toward to the MPP. So these particular ethnic tensions that may exist and maybe are full of this particular what ways of voting of these particular regions, kind of these people kind of identifying themselves with this particular party. So it doesn't matter, for example, the MPP having maybe a Northerner or having maybe a Ga or having maybe a Fanti or having maybe an Achim as what as part of or the leader of the party, but not from Ashanti. They will still vote for you because of what that particular identity or what they foresee or how they identify themselves with that particular what people. That's why I said that people often vote for the party or candidate that best represent their group interest. So the voting over here is based on what that group interest of the Ewe population, that group interest of the Ashanti population. Looking at this particular one, which was from Salifu 2024, ethnic-based politics and electoral reforms in Ghana, you realize that in his data collection, in his findings, one thing that is intriguing is that it actually seeks to affirm that people vote based on ethnic lines. So when you look at this particular map, what do you see? You see the coloring of this map representing that of the Akan, the Ewe, the Ga, and the Northern ethnic group. You realize that their voting pattern actually really shows from which the electoral pattern voting. So importance of candidate ethnic background. People were answering this questionnaire who were sampled and were asked that do they look at that, and then people 35% says that very important. 25% says important. So combining 35 25% in terms of those who think this is important is quite what a huge number of people who feel that voting on ethnic basis or based on a candidate ethnic background is quite important to them. So 60% of this actually agree that. This is just to give you that elimination for you to understand that the sociological model really, really what exists and actually really, really what has an influence on some people in terms of what of voting. Advantages. He said, first, explain Ghana's regional voting block. So with this particular model, sociological model, it helps us understand why specific regions in Ghana constantly support particular what political parties and why people's ethnic or group what identity really matters. I hope you're getting me. So for today, I'm sure you are enlightened and you understand why maybe there is an Ewe block that votes in a certain way, and a Ashanti block that votes in a certain way. The idea of having that of ethnic hegemonic status or ethnic hegemony in that regard. So having that strong influence on voters and why they vote the way they vote in that particular manner. And then the second point has to do with highlight influence of what historical and social what context. So voting patterns reflect not just what personal preference, but a community's history. I hope you're getting me. For example, when Ghana ushered itself into the 1992, that's the fourth republic of this country. When we passed, we accepted a new constitution in 1992, and then we voted. What we realized was that uh, the founding fathers of these two parties then was for the NPP was the Adubuayin. Adubuayin was an Ashanti, and then we had then which was we had Flight Lieutenant J. John Rawlins, who was also a Voltarian. So this kind of historical bringing of these two parties has also one way or the other played into this particular what influence or this historical influence or social context in which has played over time. or how it is worked over time. So this is welcome. We can also link some of these sociological, historical what influence to these some of these events. Yeah. For the disadvantages, is that it overlooks issues and candidate evaluation. So because these people feel like it is representing their ethnic or religion, you realize that they overlook the quality of the candidature. They ignore the most important part as in these candidates, are they fit for purpose? Would they be able to deliver on their mandate? Will they be able to address issues of education, healthcare, the issues that are actually important to the Ghanaian people? They overlook some of these things. Otherwise, that it leads to extreme and can what promote what divisions along what ethnicity or ethnic lines or religious lines. So you realize that if groups loyalty or this ethnic people, the people feel like political campaign can become us versus them, this deepen what the already division or maybe tension within the elections, and then brings this ethnic group or religious or divisions or tensions at play. So you realize that somebody's stronghold in terms of maybe the Volta region is a no-go area, the Ashanti region is a no-go area, because you realize that there's more tensions in all these places. And then the third one is what patterns are evolving. So I makes the patterns are evolving, or swing regions do not really what always fit in sociological models. So we're saying that sometimes you can realize that things may be changing or things may be improving or swinging. Where, for example, in the 2024 election, you may have seen that maybe the votes that maybe the MPP gets in the Ashanti region of the period may have not been the exact vote they may actually what have gotten over the period. So some of these things are all part of that. Then moving to our next slide, which is the dominant ideological model. Voters are influenced by media, elite, and what ruling what ideology. So for you to understand this, we are saying that instead of independent judgment, voters may what adapt elite's what narrative. So, for example, the party slogan, the propaganda, government promises. So you realize that in under the Fourth Republic, we've had some party dominant models flowing around. So the NDC's slogan in 2024 was what the 24-hour what economy. You find the MPP slogan in 2016 was what was one district, one factory, free education, one village, one dam. So all this become narrative that sinks into people's head, and you realize that people may actually follow this. And then current eras of like social media, the likes of Facebook, Twitter, the likes of Instagram are all fueling and actually helping spread this political narrative faster than the traditional media even used to do. I hope you're getting me. So it is taking center seat of elections. So that is one thing the dominant agricultural model also what speaks of or talks about, and that's the examples. I think the examples in current memory I remember that I've also given out. So the advantage is that it explains power of the media framing and campaign messaging. So as I said, you realize that in 20 what 16 it was all about free education, one district, one factory, one village, one dam. Everywhere you actually walk through the country, you could actually hear this particular message. And you realize that even the opposition party then, the ruling government who were also contesting, which is the MPP, the NDC, had to play catch up. Where they also had to bring that you're going to expand e-blocks, and they even had sometimes had to respond to even the free education because the slogan became more, and they actually had to catch up with the slogan. So even the ruling party then was even having to catch up with that particular what slogan near nature of what the election was going. Likewise in 2024, where you find the fact that the 24 hours economy actually what the slogan itself what actually took the campaign trail by storm, where you actually found even the ruling party then also having to even respond to the 24 hours economy. That shows how this framing stuff and all those things actually really is important and can also influence elections in a lot of ways. And then it offers voters clarity when ideologies are well defined. So for example, these ideologies over there can be like, I'm going to put this in context. When parties communicate the ideologies that, okay, fine, we are property owning democracy, where the NPP over the period tout themselves as property owning democracy, as in they are pro business, private sector driven growth, this thing. So when voters are voting, they actually may understand, okay, fine, this particular party says that they align themselves with what? pro-business and property owning and private sector driven and growth and all those stuff. So this is the party or this is the belief I believe in. So this is the party I'm going to vote for. Likewise, the NDC sees itself to be a social democracy, which is state-led development, social programs, and all these things, which people may feel like they align themselves with these particular political parties based on these particular ideologies that these parties represent. The disadvantage comes with a limited individual choice and what critical evaluation, because these sloganeers and all those things may be routine and these messages were may be popular. You see, voters may not ask the critical questions as in, for example, you want to do free education. Voters may not ask, how is free education going to be funded? What are the what methods are you going to use? What are the number of students that are even available that will be going to second? All these questions may not come to bear because then it's all about the slogans, where maybe political leaders may actually skip implementations and then how funding and all those things can be done for this program. Likewise, the 24 hours economy. People may actually find it very catchy, very important. Like it will help deal with unemployment issues. But people may also not ask the critical questions: how is this program going to be run? How are we going to deal with the funding? Where's the money going to come from? So within the electoral cycle, some of these things would not people will not be asking some of these questions with this particular word policy. And I said, in practice, ideologies often what converge or confuse voters in the sense that, for example, in Ghana's situation like this, the MPP touts itself as I said earlier, uh, business oriented, private sector driven growth, and then the NDC sees itself as what social or Democrats. But you realize that over the period, even though these parties see themselves in terms of ideological ideas, what happens is that you find sometimes the MPP instead having to engage in social democratic stuff by maybe bringing a free education, maybe health insurance, and then the NDC maybe touting themselves as social democrats. Sometimes you find out that in 2016 the president was heavily invested in road infrastructure, having to build secondary schools, having to put a lot of infrastructure edifice in place, the UGMC hospital, all these things were things that the NDC were invested in, which you may feel like it may have been those who are property driven who will be doing all these things. So sometimes voters itself even get confused because in practice, some of these parties don't really represent that ideology that we are talking about or they claim to represent. So a race excluding minority views or minority viewpoints. So over here, electoral models and media framing can draw out smaller parties or alternatives because all attention may be on voters have their ears mainly on, for example, MPP and it's the likes of the CPP, PNC, PPP, and then their narrative will not catch attention. So it basically creates a two-party trap or two parties narration where we're looking at the MPP and the NDC in terms of their framing or in terms of what they would want to sell out to the people. So the minority viewpoint, mostly what people don't see the options available to them because it's not necessarily brought to the front of the media or the framing for people to actually get to use or listen to all these. Also, the rational choice theory, another theory we're going to look at, which is also very important theory. So voters act like consumers, so they weigh the cost and benefits. So the rational choice theory sees voters as what, as I said, as consumers, where they are weighing their cost and benefits, what analysis or options. So each voter asks himself, him or herself, that which candidate or party will give me what the most gains. So the voters will compare their option based on personal interest, their economic condition, their policy, and then what expected results. So it is not just traditional group or identity. They're going to look at what is going to benefit them. So looking at, for example, you realize that the swing regions that we're talking about, for example, central region, which is a typical swing region, you find that people over here often are going to base on economic issues or the issues that they feel are important to them. So at the moment, they look at what's the price of fuel? Are we unemployed? What's the cost of living? So in 2016, realized that the same central region voted for the new patriotic party because within then, people were complaining about the cost of living, fuel, and other expenses. In 2024, the same central region voted against the MPP because They were complaining of issues of what galamsey, and all these things were actually issues that people were complaining about, and maybe they may have felt it, and then it accounted for the parties also what lost. So mostly we call these regions in the Ghanaian context kingmakers because of their decisions in election cycles where they change hands and mostly go with the ruling party in every election cycle. And then if there has to be election cycle, they actually vote in such candidates to power. Yeah. So to this for you to understand very well. So look at this. We're looking at the central region, which is the swing region we are talking about. The most amazing and fascinating thing about that, looking at the constituency level, you realize that in 96, they get the NDC 14 seat and get the MPP 3. In 2000, they gave in 96. That is when the MPP, the NDC won that particular election. So they had the highest vote. That's realized. But what the amazing thing in 2000, the NDC lost the election. So what did you see? You see the MPP gaining 11 seats and the NDC gaining what 6 seats. In 2004, they voted again with the MPP. They gave the MPP 17 seats and they gave what the NDC 2 seats. In 2008, what happened was that the MPP lost the election in 2008. They lost their incumbents. So when the NDC was coming from opposition, what did they get? 12 seats, and the MPP making a 7. The following electoral cycle was 16-7, which was the then NDC retaining power. When the NDC lost again in 2016, they had 3 seats, the MPP had 20 seats. And then in 2024, you've seen that they've lost and it also changed. So it shows you their nature of voting. And you can see it here, and it tells it all. It actually tells it all in terms of their voting cycle. In terms of presidential, you realize it is here. In every electoral cycle where there's been a winner declared, they voted with the winner so far, and they change hands. They don't vote for one party. That is why we call it, or we see it as what, as a swing region. So advantages of this is that it encourages competition, accountability, and politicians must what earn their vote. So when you have people voting this way, politicians are really, really afraid. And when they come to power, they try to make sure that they do whatever they can do to appease the people. So mostly at the constituency level, people do their best, because if you don't do your best, it means that in the next electoral cycle, they will kick you off. So if the people of Central Region voted for against the MPP in 2024, it means that they felt that they underperformed and did not deliver on the promise or mandate or what they expected, so they voted them out. Also, promote uh, or promotes pragmatic voting decision. So these are people who are not blind to party loyalty. They vote rationally. So they choose or they vote for candidates based on policy, track record, competence, and then benefits they are going to offer. So it's a more thoughtful, a more insightful, a more pragmatic decision-making process. So the voters choose what works best, not just what is familiar or traditional. That is with what the rational choice means. Then a disadvantage would be assume that all voters are highly informed and rational. So rational choice model works best if voters know all the facts, right? So they compare policies and then choose logically. But what you realize is that in reality, most voters do not read manifestos and don't analyze policies. Are we getting? So many relies on slogan, party, colors, and what is a local opinion, local leaders' opinion, all this kind of stuff. That's what some of these things becomes what problems. So you realize that the radio jangles, the rallies, and all the endorsements are sometimes what voters look at. So many overlook what overlooks emotional, social, or ideological factors. So rational choice suggests that voters always what calculate cost and benefit, but in reality, emotions are part of voting. People vote based on their emotions, their loyalty, and where they feel they are ideologically what inclined to. And then the last one has to do with the fact that not always predictive predictive in areas with strong or party identification or ethnic or ties. So when it comes to areas with strong party identification, like the Volta region, the Ashanti region, where we refer to as board banks, these particular models do not work. So, for example, even in 2016, where Ghanaians complained of doomsaw, but then it actually been addressed by Ghanaians complaining within that 2014, 15, 16 of doomsaw, the economic hardship and all those things. People in the voter regions still voted for the NDC. Also in 2024, when people were voting, complaining about issues of galamsey, the economy, haircuts, bonds, be having issues and all those things, people in the Ashanti region still voted for the MPP. So these are some of the things in which what we are referring to. So these are some of the filling questions you can try your hands on. The first filling question has to do with name any two of the four theories of voting, which is party identification model and sociological model. We've mentioned that of what dominant and rational choice. These are all types. So the second question is, what is the political identification model? The political identification model, it's a filling question. There is no need sometimes to repeat the question itself. So it explains the voting behavior as based as on strong emotional attachment to political party, often acquired through family, region, or history, right? Family, region, or tradition. Let's put that way. Good. So the third one says that state one merit and one demerit of the party identification model. So one merit is that makes election outcome predictable in party strongholds. One demerit is that it can devalue candidates' quality as voters may choose the party over the individual. Question number 4. What is the sociological model? This model explains that voter behavior is shaped by social identity factors such as ethnicity, religion, class, which influence group membership and what voter choice or vote choice. Question number 5. State one merit and one demerit of the sociological model. The first one has to do with the first merit has to do with what explains Ghana's regional voting what block. Demerit overlooks issues and candidate evaluation focus too much on group identity. Then the next set of filling question has to do with what is the dominant ideological model. It explains that voter behavior as being shaped by what the prevailing ideas, values, and narrative promoted by media, elites, and ruling parties, leading voters to often accept elite message rather than what independently evaluate issues. Indicate any one way the dominant electoral model is similar to the party electoral model. And then one way is that both models suggest that voters may follow established group or narratives rather than they are making independent assertion or choice or critical choices. Loyalty to party or acceptance of elite ideas can override personal evaluation. Then question number 8 is a state one merit and one demerit of the dominant ideological model. So the merit over here is that help explain how media, slogans, and elite messages unify voters around national goals or themes. Demerit has to do with what limit independent judgment and can what marginalize minority or alternative voices. Then our next question is, what is rational choice model? The rational choice model describes voters as decision makers who weigh cost and benefits before choosing the candidate or party they may want to vote for or choose. Question number 10. State one merit and one demerit of rational choice model. The merit is promote competition and accountability, as politicians must earn voters' votes by delivering results. Demerit, assume all voters are highly informed and rational, which isn't always the case in practice. Question number 11. What is skirt and blouse voting? And how does it relate to voting models in Ghana? Skirt and blouse voting is when a voter selects different party for presidential and different candidate on the same, different candidate for parliamentary on the same electoral voting or ballot. So this is